6 o'clock, I will call this regular city council meeting on Thursday, July 25th to order. If you will rise, I will lead us in the invocation followed by the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you've given us. Thank you for the beautiful weather and the many blessings you give us. Be with all those that are sick and hurting. Be with our staff and our volunteers and our citizens, Lord. Help us to make wise decisions tonight and do things that glorify your name. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Janine, is there anybody registered for citizen comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Olmsted.
Mr. Olmsted, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
This is Al Olmsted. My address is 220 West 2nd Street in Littlefield. Mr. Warren has a packet of documents that I've prepared for each of you. Mr. Grant, in his current financial packet that he gave you for this meeting, has admitted that he's $52,000 over budget for legal expenses. That's me. And the question is, how proportionate is this? He spent $52,000 already, he's admitted, to deal with me. I told Janine many months ago, before this started, it was going to cost about $250,000 to deal with me. His lawyers are now all defendants. Your lawyers are now all defendants. The judges are now defendants. And one judge is fighting to keep the job as a judge at all. All of this for a lawsuit in which I asked for nothing for myself. Not a thing. Already $52,000 on this way to $250,000 for a lawsuit in which I asked for nothing. Doesn't that strike you as disproportionate? Well, what is the lawsuit about? It's about collecting evidence that in a civil suit, Mr. Grant cannot refuse to produce in order to provide to the federal government for prosecution of him. And Mr. Warner and I have been in in-depth discussion with the FBI, and we're starting off with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Right now, you're going into a budget session. I'm telling you, if you approve the budget that man right there, Mitch Grant, has prepared for you, you're going to be fined a minimum of $10,000 each and a maximum of 20 years in prison for securities fraud for each of 5 counts so far of securities fraud. That's what this is between Mitch Grant and me, keeping him out of prison and keeping you from finding out the truth of what's going on. I have asked for nothing for myself, only for the taxpayers of the city. My belief, and I happen to be a licensed to practice law in finance, despite what the lies that he's been telling about me for 2 years. I'm a pro at this. I'll tell you openly and honestly with documentation, anything you need to know. But what I'm telling you is you are on the line. Right now, you're scot-free. You approved that budget that he's providing you without a complete accounting of the securities. And you're going to be in trouble because what he's been doing has been going on for at least 10 years, kicking the can down the road. You borrow a credit card. You can't pay it back. So you get a second credit card to pay back the first. Then you need a third credit card to pay back this. Everything is fine as long as you can get a new credit card.
Your time is up.
With this
Mr.
lawsuit,
Olmsted.
he can't
Please have a
issue
seat.
a new bond. That's
Time
what
is
the
up.
problem
Please
is.
have a seat.
You need to take care of yourselves. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself as I've demonstrated.
Thank you.
Back down.
Renee, we're still in citizen comment. Did you have a comment? Are you going to discuss?
No, I'm
this?
okay.
Is there any other further citizens comment?
I don't have anything.
All right. At this time, we'll move to agenda item number 5, introduction of new city employees. Mitch? None. At this time, we'll consider and approve minutes from the June 25th regular meeting. There was one typo I noticed at the top, Janine. It says the 28th day of May, so it should have been June 25th. But if there are no other additions or corrections to the minutes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as read?
I'll make the motion.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny, that we approve the minutes as read. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve monthly departmental reports, police department, fire department, EMS, code enforcement, animal control, landfill, water, wastewater, streets and parks, municipal court, monthly financial reports, sales tax collection, property tax collection, LDCA, and D of course met. If you have a question, please identify the page.
Comment, the nice, the pictures from the EMS are quite amazing, very nicely done in there. Very good work with that use of the funds. And then I had a question on page 51. That's just an oddity, because I don't believe I've ever seen it before, and I overlooked it. I don't know for certain. It looks like to me that there's a transfer out of the account, the general fund account, to hotel/motel tax based upon Best Western, Crescent Park for, I guess, tax payment, hotel motel tax payments. Has this ever been done before, or is this I just overlooked it?
Andrew's not here. Those are in there every month.
I guess it only comes in quarterly, so that's maybe why I may have missed it before, but this is a big bunch of them at the same time. I was just wondering how that worked. 'Cause that's probably what it is, it's transferring to a hotel motel tax.
There is a separate
Yeah,
one for.
probably coming in and then going over to the hot.
Okay. That just, it was odd,
Just
because
transfer.
typically you pay a vendor when it comes in, and the vendor shows to be hotel/motel
Right.
tax. That's what I
Of
was
course,
assuming.
Come in clumps.
Later on, there's a parks one that every month they transfer
Right.
out into the park fund.
Right, I was just wondering if that was the first time this has happened, or if this has been going on for.
No, I think that, I've seen this before.
Okay.
On page 29, Monica, I wanted to tell you and your staff, thank you for the great work that your EMS Volunteer Association does of purchasing $43,000 worth of equipment for funds that y'all have raised this year. It's very impressive, and thank you for y'all's dedication. Any other questions on the department reports? If none, can I get a motion to approve them as read?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Buddy, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have a presentation and discussion of proposed budget for fiscal year 2019, 2020. Andrew, are you ready?
Yep, sure. I'll kind of go through the budget, and I'll kind of highlight any changes. It's pretty much kind of the same budget, but I'll highlight any changes we've had from the previous year. So just kind of to start, on your first page, let's see. I'll start on page 100, kind of on our summary page. And we're looking at kind of trying to keep $100,000 revenues over expenses. We'd kind of like to see that number kind of go higher in the future, but right now it's pretty decent to try to keep it around $100,000, I think. Moving to the next page, let's go into the general fund revenues. So we've done some adjustments to the revenues. We usually try to look at historical numbers on these and try to adjust them to kind of what we think come in. We're currently assuming the same revenue from taxes right now. We got our certified tax rate in, and the values of Littlefield has gone up a little bit, so it'll kind of be up to the council if they want to you can take the effective rate where we bring in the same revenue, or you can keep the same tax rate, we'll bring in a little bit of extra revenue, or whatever the council decides on that. But as of right now, we're just budgeting the same revenue that we kind of had last year off of that. Moving down, kind of the changes that we've made to the general fund revenues, you're going to see penalties and interest are going to be up a little bit from last year's $22,000. Last year, we're raising it to $25,000. It's kind of been up recent years, or kind of around $26,000. So we're going to eke it up a little bit, try to match what we need to come in. Going down to like telephone franchise. We've had some money in the past. Those have been kind of catch-up payments from NTS. NTS will get into a habit where they won't pay their franchise fees, and they'll send them kind of a letter, and they'll pay a bunch of franchise fees all at once, and it kind of distorts what we get in. I'm not exactly sure how much money we get in from them if they just paid us normally for a year, so we're kind of assuming we're gonna lower that a little bit to kind of, it's mostly just Windstream that pays us consistently, and that's about how much money we get in from Windstream is at $25,000. So not currently assuming NTS, if they ever start paying regularly, we'll add that into it. But right now, we're just gonna estimate $25,000 on that. That's pretty much what Windstream is. Going down to gas franchise, we're gonna lower that a little bit. I think it was budgeted based on like really kind of harsh winters and stuff like that, to where we get, you know, a lot of gas franchise in a more temperate winter like we've had in the past years. It's around, you know, 60,000 is kind of what we estimate, and that's kind of what we're gonna go with for our budget for next year. So we're kind of lowering that from $67,000 to $60,000. Raising all of our, moving down from there, kind of all of our permit fees associated with our code enforcement are all up slightly. I think they'll match kind of what we budgeted, but I did raise like food and beverage slightly from 250 to 300, but all those seem in line, so that we're just gonna leave most of those the same. Court fees, sort of the same. That's kind of on the lower side. We're not technically meeting some of our budgeted court revenue line items, so we're eking down admin fees for municipal court from 4,000 to 3,000. And then a couple others kind of lower. You'll see warrant fees go down a little bit and traffic fees go down a little bit. For the first time, you'll see a miscellaneous permit line item there. We're going to split out miscellaneous permits from building permits. They've kind of typically been the same line item previously, but this time we're actually going to make a building permits line item as long as the miscellaneous permits line item. You may notice the miscellaneous permits biggest factor is usually permits that we use with kind of gambling establishments, or not gambling, but Lucky Sevens thing where they have a gaming permit that they have to get, and it's usually like $15,000 that we get from that permit. So I'm splitting that into miscellaneous, along with some other small things like permits that are just kind of miscellaneous. So we're splitting those two out. That's why that miscellaneous permit popped up this time. Let's see, continuing down. Dog pound fees, we're eating up a little bit. The animal control officer is doing an excellent job by the numbers, because we're seeing more people. It's $25 usually if your dog's caught by animal control and you come to retrieve it. It's usually $25, and we're seeing that number is up a lot. I mean, compared to like previous years, it's usually been around 1,000. I'm going to eke it up to about 1,750, because that's about what we're estimating for this year. Going down to interest, we're raising from 15 to 24. That's interest associated with most of our checking accounts that we have, and they get a little bit of interest on those checking accounts. And the interest rates have gone up a little bit, so it's safe to raise that revenue for interest up a little bit. Let's see, going down, we're going to lower fire service a little bit. We're estimating 10,000 this year, so we're just going to go with that number and estimate 10,000 for next year. Ambulance fees is going up a little bit. Monica does a really good job of giving us pretty concise estimates of her revenues and expenses, and so we're going to go with kind of a number that we agreed on with her to raise that up. It's been kind of high in previous years, so we're going to eat that personnel fees or ambulance fees up a little bit on our budget. Right below it, the EMS personnel subsidy, and we're lowering that a little bit, just because that's kind of what we think is going to happen next year. Monica's pretty accurate on her estimates for her revenue for EMS personnel subsidies, so we're going to lower that a little bit to around 4638. Landfill operations, we're lowering a little bit. In the previous past, probably 2 years, there's been kind of a heightened amount of landfill operations due to the fact there was a hailstorm about 2 years ago. There was a lot of shingles being taken to the landfill. That's kind of cooled off, so we're cooling off the revenue a little bit for next year, from 50,000 to 40,000. Below that, we're just taking out weed removal, because that's usually not being utilized at this point. Campground donations were bringing from 3,000 to 1,200 due to the fact that campgrounds have cooled off some. That there was a lot of people out there when they were constructing the milk or the Continental Dairy facility, and so now there's not a lot of people out there for that. There's not as many people in campground donations. And then below that, the other revenue we're taking from 20 to 10. We don't have as much miscellaneous revenue as we used to. We kind of tried to split things out of that, it's just kind of a big catch-all, so we try to categorize more stuff nowadays than we used to, so that's just kind of lowering to, because we're actually putting revenues into line items that you can tell what they are versus just lumping them all into miscellaneous. And then, let's see, going to the next page, there's really no more changes that we have. You'll see the LEDC assistance fund has gone up. I'll kind of explain that later when we get into the budget. That's $25,000 that we get from LEDCB for managing their funds. And the other portion of that, the other $152,968, if you take away the $125, is actually the amount you'll see down there on the LEDCA expense sheet is $127,968. We add that to $25,000 to get that LEDC assistance fund balance. So we're kind of, and I'll explain that when we get to LADC 101-620 and how that kind of works. So let's move on to our expenses. So the next page, we're going to start with legislative expenses. So we're, like I said, we're keeping most of the numbers the same. You're going to see election expense go up here. This 258 election expense is going to go from 3,000 to 6,000. We're doubling that because there might be a chance that there'll be 2 elections next year. So we'll double, the expenses associated with that. Turning to the next page, everything else on that should be the same. Turning to the next page to the 01602 administration budget. The operation changes on here are going to be this 215. The postage, we're raising postage. There's been more certified mail being mailed out of our water department and our code enforcement department. There was a lot this year, that's why we're estimating 6,000, but it should come down a little bit, but there still should be a lot of certified mail going out. So we're going to raise that postage amount $1,000 from 4,000 to 5,000. And then also advertising, we're raising a little bit. Historically, that's always been kind of high, but that advertising for administration is kind of like postings we put in the Lamb County Leader News and notices and things associated with that nature. So we're raising that a little bit too, but that should be the only changes on administration. Flipping to the next page, the 01606 police. We're going to raise overtime a little bit from 7,500 to 12,000. It's kind of volatile how overtime's used in the police department. Chief's been kind of good about saying he's going to get full staff and still bring it down from our estimations, but we're going to raise that a little bit anyway, because you never know about emergency services and stuff like that. Moving down to contractual services, dues and memberships, we're going to lower that $1,000. Historically, it's been kind of low, so we're just going to lower that a little bit. Cell phone allowance, we only have 2 cell phone allowances out of PD right now, and each one of those is about $600 a year. So we're going to reflect that and lower that to $1,200. General office supplies down there at 301 in the supplies and maintenance. We're going to raise that a little bit. It's historically been kind of busted, so we're going to eat that up a little bit, try to match reality. And the only other thing is down there at the bottom, the 400 capital outlay, you'll see the machines and equipment at $59,640. This will be our first capital outlay item that we proposed. And this will be for the WatchGuard camera system that we'll put in, that the chief wants to put in his Tahoe, the camera system. We need to upgrade the camera system in the Tahoes that the officers use, and this was quoted from the WatchGuard company, is what it would cost to input the new system into all those police Tahoes that we have. So that's kind of the first capital outlay item that we suggest and put in the budget. Moving over to the fire department on 1607. So we raised machines and equipment down there in contractual services to 275. We raised the machine and equipment from 7 to 8. Usually we've been slightly over on it, and there's some, concern about that. So we're just going to eat it up to $8,000, so we can be sure to get all our fire trucks, all the services they need on that. And that's really the only change on the fire department as far as the budget goes. So moving over to 609 refuse. You're going to see us input certification pay. It's going to be input on a couple. It's 120 there. We're going to try to do a little different how we do certification pay. So we're going to put the certification pay in the budget now, so you can see any certification pay being given and how we do that. So that's kind of a separate line item now. That's why I'm including that. Going down to 210, you'll see us put $20,000 in contractual services. This is a fence around the old landfill. We need to put to close our old landfill, we'll need to put a a fence around it, and so those are kind of our estimated costs, how much that fence is gonna cost out there. Moving down, I lowered uniforms $1,000. Typically, we give about $1,000 per employee for uniforms. There used to be 4 employees at the refuse department, now there's only 3, so I'm reflecting that by lowering. Below that, minor tools and equipment, it's kind of historically been breached as far as, you know, them having to get tools out there. So I eked that up a little bit for $1,200 to $2,000. Below it's diesel fuel. We've been either busting it or getting really close to that, so I went ahead and put some extra money in there, raising it from $20,000 to $25,000 for diesel, just because they've been getting really close, if not busting it in the previous years. And moving down from there, kind of the same deal with the repair and maintenance. We rose that a little bit. It used to be higher. Last year we lowered it some, but I feel like we're estimating 25 this year. We're going to raise it to 25 for next year too. And that should be the only changes on the refuse department.
Hey, Andrew, I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, like on the diesel fuel and stuff like that, and gasoline, does that stuff get contracted out, or does it just go to spot price or whatever it is?
With the diesel fuel, we get our diesel fuel for like heavy equipment and refuse from Center Gas, and so they usually just fill up the tank with Center Gas. Center Gas is usually the only people that we buy the diesel fuel from for that.
So it'd just be a spot price of what it is
Yes,
on
sir.
that, so it's not a set year-round thing, so.
Correct.
If, you know, price of crude goes up or down, I mean.
We just kind of are at the whims of that. Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just curious about that, because that price could, I mean, it could go.
Yes, if fuel prices went up, we try to stay ahead of it with our estimations, but yeah, if it went up high, you definitely see that reflected in this.
Okay.
So we just mainly try to keep it a little bit higher than kind of what we're expecting, just in case of the volatility of the fuel side.
Okay.
And then I think, yeah, that's all the ones I have. So let's move on to the next page is the airport. We used to run the airport out of the general fund. It's actually the general fund now, so this will probably be the last time I have this page in the budget. Just because this is kind of a defunct department now. It's no longer,
Why is that?
all the landfill revenue and expenses are now run out of the landfill department. It's just Fund 19, so it's a separate airport. My bad.
So, well, why is it not, because we still have expenses at the airport, why do you not have it in our budget?
Well, it's no longer part of the general fund. It is in the budget further back. It's in the back.
But it's in the funds.
Well, it's not in general fund,
Right. So-
which is what we're talking
Well,
about.
I know.
It's-
Explain that,
the
why
reason-
was that removed out of the general fund?
The covenants for the federal grants require you to have a separate fund for your airport.
Right, but we have a separate park fund. Couldn't we, if you have grants come in, wouldn't it be administered the same way the park fund would be administered?
Most of the park funds aren't federal grants.
Well, I know that, but could it not be administered the same way, keeping the grants off of the books as a fund, so that in our budget, we could actually see income and expenses
Well, the
that
park
are
fund
not
is-
grant related?
The park fund is a separate fund.
I'm talking about the airport.
I thought you were talking about the
I'm
parks.
talking about the airport.
Okay. The airport is a separate fund because that's one of the grant covenants for federal grants.
Right, but it doesn't say you have to move the whole airport off the general fund. I mean, we're still gonna have income and expenses on it.
And it's in that budget.
Yeah,
that
it's,
fund
it's,
right in your-
it's accounted for, it's, money in, money out from the general fund. Like we have some expenses that, if you look under revenue, I think there's some revenue, from the airport fund.
Well, what I'm saying is it's just harder for us to look at our budget and say, okay, because the funds themselves, you have the transfers from our general fund, obviously the money comes in, you transfer it out to the fund, but we don't know where it's going in that fund. We don't see how that budget's working except for the fund. We don't have, you know what I'm saying, it's not the same.
Can you go to 133 and do airport now, Andrew?
Sure. So, yeah, moving in the back of the budget, probably on the last page of the budget, since it was the most recent year. Let's see here. It's gonna be page 133, yeah. The airport fund, we assume, since the fund's by itself, we take revenues and expenses. We estimate $11,400 on leases, $4,000 on miscellaneous revenue, and $11,000 transfer in due to try to balance it and keep it from being a hole too bad. And then the expenses there, you know, pretty much kind of what we've been going with, the regular salary for Tom Brown, airport contracts, water, which is what we pay to Sunnydale, or whatever deal out there. Property taxes, which are associated with airport property. Chemicals for spraying pesticides and stuff, or weed control probably, and repairs and maintenance that we do to the tarmac, and the $11,000 grant that we have planned for next year, I believe. So that's kind of the airport expenses that we have budgeted this time, all of them not municipal.
So it actually makes it more transparent because you can see exactly what's being transferred in from the general fund with transfers in to balance the revenue.
Correct. And we try to keep the revenue from, you know, trying to keep it from digging a hole. So sometimes if we have to transfer revenue in, it's because the revenues of the airport are not quite meeting the expenses. Or the expenses of the airport are slightly higher than the revenue. So we have to transfer money in, say the general fund a little.
Can somebody give me some documentation on that? You said that the grants require it to be in a separate fund. Are we actually, that doesn't sound right to me. I mean, if
Federal
that's the
grant.
case, you said a federal grant?
The federal grant for the airport, I don't know about all federal grants, but the one for the airport requires a,
I don't know, we've got grants over
Separate fund.
years for, yeah, we've got grants for the airport for years. And it's always, it's a department of our city. So, I mean, we might as well just make every department into a fund. I mean, I know they don't get grants, but still, the administration of those grants could be handled easily by the transfer arm that you're doing anyway. You know, if you're gonna get a grant in, it's gonna come into the general fund, is it not?
So what is the negative with it being its own fund? I don't
It just throws things off because normally we're looking at a budget. We're looking at departments in our budget, and it's sitting over there by itself as something that has income and expense that is just different from everything else. If it's being operated as a department, it should be in our departmental budget that shows up in the regular budgets. These fund things are brand new because I asked for them not too long ago. Otherwise, we'd never seen them.
These airport funds, air funds have always been in the budget. So you're referring to the monthly departmental reports. But in your budget, in the general fund, there has to be a line item transfer for this $11,000 that's reflected into the general fund, correct, Andrew?
Yes.
Where would that be so that we can reference that? It'd be on the first page of expenses.
Let me see. You're gonna see it on page 102. It's kinda gonna be below the general fund expenses total, and you'll see a transfer for the airport fund for $11,000.
So this is brand new this year. You've never done this before.
I've never transferred money to the airport fund.
We've never, and there's obviously, we're transferring the funds.
that was the airport fund last year.
Yeah, last year was the first year that we had the airport fund.
But we've never seen it until this year when I asked for the information.
Is in last year's budget as well.
I think so.
Oh, they had zeros on the, yeah, it had zeros on the budget, and you said, oh, it transferred to this other thing, and we didn't see that information. You said it transferred to a fund, but we didn't have that fund information.
The 01612 on page 110 has been in the budget for the last 2 years with zeros on it because that is the old department code that the airport used to be under. Starting in this year's budget, maybe last year's, there is a separate fund for the airport, and it has been in the budget every year. But that's why you're seeing zeros on that airport, 01.612, is because that is the old department.
I understand that. But what I don't understand is what the reason for moving to a fund, other than that you said a federal grant. But I don't understand why we can't keep this in our budget and keep it in the regular departmental budget system and have that money being sent over as a transfer into that fund. And then the expenses taken out, like you would out of a park fund. If a project was used for the park fund, you would take the money out for park improvements. If it was a grant for the airport, you would take the money out for whatever that was for.
That's what this does.
But why don't we keep it in the regular budget? What's the purpose of moving it? Other than you say that federal grant,
Strictly because of the federal grant. It has a covenant in there.
it says the
It
whole
says-
thing has been taken out of our budget. So every place that gets a federal grant, Lubbock gets a federal grant for their airport. They
didn't
have
say
a
that.
separate fund for their airport.
I didn't say that. I said.
But it's
in the
more,
airport
it's more
grants.
transparent, you know where it's going, because it has its own department. Fund 19 Airport Fund, it's more transparent. What, do you wanna try to hide it in the general fund? Is that what you're saying?
This is the same thing as what you're talking about, except it's actually in our budget. The ones with the zeros on it, that's called being transparent. You're moving it to a fund that is not. It's kind of,
That's gonna
if I hadn't asked for it a few months ago, we wouldn't have seen this.
That's gonna be in our budget.
Now,
Was it not in this last budget, Andrew, the airport fund?
I think it was, I don't have the last budget with me.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you want it back on the 0 budget?
put it back in a department. Don't you believe that it being a department of the city? Is it not a department of the city? Or is it a department of the city? Which one is it?
Nobody likes to have a whole bunch of different funds, but, you know, I just don't wanna take any chances with our.
Well, then that's what,
Federal grant.
notice our attorney's not here, so we can't ask him whether the actual covenant says we have to move the whole entire department to a fund. That seems a
It just
little
says
bit
you
out
have to have
of.
airport.
Airport
separate
fund,
yeah.
okay, but that's just like having a park fund.
Well, you shouldn't have a fund that's not accounted for correctly.
So
So you're
I guess we
saying a
need
park fund
to,
is not accounted for correctly?
No, I didn't say that.
You just implied that. You implied that.
so Ben, are you wanting to move the airport back into the old
Yeah, move it back into the regular budget, so we have it in.
I guess we're gonna need to take a vote on that so that we can give some direction to the staff, and then I guess also, in the meantime, we're gonna need to pull up more legal documents and engineering, whatever.
I don't think you can I don't think you can, take action on it at this meeting because it's not on the agenda.
Well, we're not but we're just giving direction is.
Put it on a future agenda.
It's just a discussion, yes. So, I mean, I guess you gotta dig up those documents of the lawyers or the engineers who've ever said that do it. I mean, it makes more sense, it's more transparent. I know you have a problem with the airport being, I don't understand, but it's in the budget, it's reflected, it's adopted, it is a page in the budget. I guess until next time, until you can get some stuff to help us.
Put it over there.
Andrew, will you continue?
Sure, starting with, going to 0160-613, the shared costs. On page 111. So in contractual services in our 205 legal, which is sort of our Underwood lawyer line item. Historically, it's been kind of high. This year, the estimates are really high, so we're going to move that up to $50,000 for next year. Going down to 2010 contractual services, we're moving that up. I'm moving that up $3,000. There's actually a fee associated with our gas cards now, and that's where I'm going to put it. So that's why that line item went from $4,000 to $7,000. I estimate about $3,000 a year. Moving down to cleaning supplies. Cleaning supplies has also been historically kind of busted, so we're going to move that up to $6,000 to reflect that. That should be the only changes on these 6-1 budgets. Moving to the general fund fleet, the 615. We're moving the overtime up. We've actually got a new mechanic, and he's a good mechanic, so, and he paid a little higher than our previous mechanics, so we're gonna move the overtime up on that. Minor tools and equipment went up $3,000, but diesel went down $1,000. They don't really buy diesel out of this fund anymore, and operation, maintenance, construction went from $2,000 to $0. That's a little bit of a vague fund, so we moved it all kind of minor tools and equipment. And that should be the only changes on the 615 budget. The next one is 01616 EMS. Part-time and overtime going up slightly. Down in the 210 contractual services, we're gonna lower that a little bit. Software support right below it, the EMS, I believe, is having to use a new computer system. It's gonna be slightly more expensive, so we're raising that slightly. Raising repairs and maintenance down there, or contractual repairs and maintenance. We're adding a machines and equipment line item at 275, so that the EMS can buy some EMS equipment. So that's the first appearance of that machines and equipment line item for EMS in this year. Moving down to supplies and maintenance, raising automotive equipment a little bit, and lowering delinquent debt collection very slightly. And down in the capital outlay, you'll see building and structures budgeted at let's see. Should be, yeah, $8,600 there at the bottom of the page. And that is going to be for an additional enclosed building that EMS will put out there. And then down on radios will lower a little bit. We'll lower radios from 74 to 55. And that's the EMS changes. On the next page, on 01617 dispatch, as far as the operations go, there's been no changes this year from last year on this budget. So the next one, this is the 01620 LEDCA. This is not the LEDCA budget. This is actually a budget that I put in here. It helps keep track of any expenses that the city incurs on behalf of LEDCA. So we pay, like, we do their salary or their payroll processing and stuff in our department. So any money spent out of here is usually money that the city spends on behalf of LEDCA for any reason. And once again, that is whatever spent out of this department, this 01620, is directly reimbursed to us by LEDCA and reflected in that revenue line item, that LEDCA assistance line item in the revenue fund. Moving on to the next page, to licensing enforcement, 01623, you'll see there in 015 overtime, we're gonna raise overtime a little bit. It's historically been over 5,000 somewhere, so we're gonna raise it $500. Going down, I'm putting immunization and physical in there. It's usually for drug screens or something that we have on that. It just used to be budgeted, it wasn't for, so I'll put it back in. The software went to zero. We were never able to put in animal control software, so we're just gonna strip that out of the budget. So that's gonna go to zero. And down on the cell phone allowance, we only pay one cell phone out of there, so we're moving that from 1,200 to 600. And then down in the supplies and maintenance, you'll see the gasoline. We're gonna raise the gasoline up a little bit because they've been high as to what we budgeted. Usually the biggest reason for that is this is probably one of the first years that we've had 2 people in that department for an entire year. They're both using pickups, so that we're just gonna raise that a little bit to compensate for what we think will be higher usage. The next page is emergency management. The only change on this department is gonna be under 210 contractual services. We're gonna raise the contractual services up $100. We can kind of pinpoint what's gonna go into there, so we budget that pretty close. Going to the next page with residential collection. The overtime has historically been high, so we're gonna move that up slightly. Moving down, so our first one is 275 machines and equipment. You'll see we raised to 25,000. We're actually going to attempt to purchase some new dumpsters. We're getting kind of low on our dumpster count. You know, over time, dumpsters could get bent or warped and they could become unusable for us. So we're gonna try to buy some to just keep us to where we're not gonna get into an issue on that. So that's kind of why we rose that to $25,000. It's kind of a capital outlay, but it's more just trying to keep what we got going without, having to come and go, well, all of a sudden we need 100 of these things or anything. We just try to slowly get them in and keep on top of it from now on. And then going down, we're gonna raise repair and maintenance a little bit. Estimating higher amounts this year, so we're gonna try to match kind of what we estimate this year on that line item. And that should be the only changes for residential collection. Moving to 01626, the Public Works. We're gonna keep the same plan, repavement, the asphalt seal coating plan that we had last year and this year as well. And you'll see we're gonna lower automotive equipment a little bit. And for the reason that down there on the capital outlay, you'll see in the motor vehicle, we have $51,000 budgeted. We're gonna attempt to get 4 to 5 pickups with that amount to try to replace some pickups that are in some pretty bad shape across the Public Works Department. And then there's also a $5,542 in a grant match, and that I believe is for a park plan grant. And those should be, so those pickups are another one of the capital outlay line items that we put here and we'll recommend.
Do you think that's a real number to get 4 pickups?
You know, they're not gonna be fancy or anything, but this is the park department, so they don't need just very fancy stuff to run. They just need some pickups that work for the most part, so.
They'll go back to like rents or rides again, right?
Exactly, and that's kind of the plan at this point. Moving on to the municipal court, budget, 01630. Once again, you'll see 120, the certification pay, kind of like how I said, we're kind of trying to change how we do certification pay a little bit, so you'll see that crop up this year. And then down on dues and memberships, we rose $50 just because some of the dues went up for the municipal court, and that should be the only changes from last year that we had. Yep. So that kind of does it for the general fund. We can move on to the water fund, starting with the revenues. So something I find kind of neat is our water sales we're estimating up significantly. This is due to the water sales that we're now selling to Continental Dairy. They're buying some water from us, and that's pretty nice to have. So we're going to estimate that up about $300,000. Right below it, we're going to lower our disconnection charges rate. It's been kind of coming in lower over recent years, so we're going to try to move that to reflect what we think to be reality, move that down a little bit. The rest of the revenues, we're going to pretty much leave the same as of right now. Everything's looking pretty good for this year. But we're leaving the same right now, just to be sure that we're not overestimating anything. And then kind of important, further down on this page, you'll kind of see your debt service transfers. We have 2 bonds that we transfer debt for right now. The Highway 84 sewer, which you'll see at 136,800, and TCCC BCF INS debt service, which will be at 648,000. And you'll also see the water meter debt, I believe. We're going to be doing our last payment here in September on that particular debt. And so as approved by council back when we were talking about the meter replacement program, that 105,816, the resources that we're putting toward the old water meter debt is going to go toward our new water meter replacement program that you'll see in 02608 coming up. Is we move the resources from that into that meter replacement program, because that's kind of was the council directive back when we talked about our meter replacement program. So let's start with the first department in the water budget, which is 02603, utility billing. The only change that we had here was we rose the 293, the credit card fees, which are fees associated with people who pay with credit cards. We rose that about 500. We kind of see that going up historically, and you know, more and more people pay with credit cards now, even than when I first started working here. So the fees with those kind of creep up too. And then you'll see down in the 320 buildings and structures, we're lowering that $10,000 to $7,000. We plan some work on city.
Do we charge a credit card fee to the consumer when?
No, we don't. And you'll see those credit card fees, that expense line item in municipal court and in my utility billing department associated with people who pay with credit card for like your water bill, or people who pay with credit card for, say, a municipal court fine. We separate those out so that you can see the credit card fees associated with, say, the municipal court, and then also mine there, and that too.
Is that maybe something we need to consider as a service charge if they use a credit card?
You could consider it. I'm not
a difference to you.
Yeah, probably is. And those should be the only changes on the utility billing part. Going to the wastewater department. Once again, you'll see the certification pay crop up the first time this year. Going down into the TCEQ permits and fees, that we're lowering 200 there and 204 the consultant. Those get lowered a little bit. This year we had a renewal on our wastewater treatment plant, and we rose those numbers temporarily for those two line items. And so they're kind of lowering down back again. And then I put $100 in there for the medical, dental, and surgical, which is this immunization physicals. That's kind of what we use for drug tests and stuff like that. Moving down into the supplies and maintenance, we're gonna raise the minor tools and equipment. It's historically kind of been busted in that department, so we're gonna raise that $1,000 from $1,500 to $2,500. Kind of the same thing down below it, that 322 sewer pipe and fittings. We're gonna take that from $4,000 to $5,000. Historically, that's kind of always been busted. So we're gonna raise that a little bit too. And those should be the only changes on the wastewater budget. And then going to 02608, water production. There was a few changes on this one. Over time, we rose. It's historically been busted, so we rose that up to 15,000 there. You'll see the certification pay be put into it just for the same reason as all the other ones were. Going down, we're gonna raise engineering a little bit. Other contractual services, this needs to be raised. Historically, it's been busted, so we're gonna raise that. Travel and training went from 3,000 to 4,000. Historically, it's been busted. We're gonna raise that. The printed material, it's not, no, we've been doing it the past couple of years, but we get our water quality reports printed and delivered now. So historically, it's been about 3,500. We're gonna budget 3,500 on it. Dues and memberships, we rose that a little bit, I think. I was estimating 1,100 this year, so I raised it from 600 to 1,000. Radios, we need to replace some of our radios. We have pretty old models and they're in pretty bad shape, so we rose that line from 1,000 to 5,000 in hopes that we can purchase some more radios for the guys. Machines and equipment, we rose that from 30,000 to 35,000. No, we didn't change things. Yeah. Machines and equipment, we rose from 30 to 35,000. We estimated it high this year, so we rose it a little bit. Going down to supplies and maintenance. Minor tools has been about 7,000 the past few years, so we just went ahead and rose it to 7,000. And automotive, we lowered some from 12,000 to 8,000. Just because there's 4 trucks, we did $2,000 a truck on that one. And operator maintenance construction, I estimated it at 10,000 this year, so we budgeted at 10,000. Water pipe fittings has been around 30,000 last year and this year, so we're raising that to 30,000. And then meters and fittings, that's our meter change program. So you'll see that raise significantly, but that's the resource that we were originally putting toward the water meter debt is now in this line item to be put toward our water meter change program. And then we also have a grant match in the capital outlay there that is also the park plan grant. And so that one is the last department for the water. Let's see, what's next? Yeah, so we're gonna move on to this other funds now. Starting with the TCCC BCF fund. We show our revenues and expenses on this. The revenues that we get toward that fund are usually $130 is kind of an INS portion of the property taxes that get deposited straight into this fund from property taxes. The rent from the facility, which I just left the same as last year. I hadn't seen, when I made this, I hadn't seen any rent checks from the new company that's out there, so I didn't have a good way to estimate kind of what we'd get from the new people yet, so I just left it the same as last year. Interest is interest associated with the INS fund that belongs to that account. It makes a little bit of interest from our checking account. And then LEDCB transfer in, usually every year LEDC contributes $250,000 to the payment of the debt associated with that facility. So that's what that $250,000 is right there. And then going to the expenses, you'll see $30,000 there, another contractual. That's the Hanson Scarborough lobbying firm that we pay. And then the supplies and maintenance, buildings and structures are usually any repairs that we have to pay on that facility. And I think I put an interest and bond payment on there, which I probably need to go and adjust that a little bit too. It won't be that high. It'll be lower than that a little bit. I just used last year's number because I hadn't made it around to really calculating out that fund yet. But it'll be somewhere around there. The next one, I believe, is LEDCB. So this is kind of no change from usual. We usually budget a fourth of kind of their portion of the sales tax that they collect for that fund. And their expenses are $25,000 that they pay to the city, which you'll see in the revenue line item, LEDC assistance in the general fund is where that $25,000 goes. And then as well as the $250,000 to transfer to the 08 fund, which we just reviewed the revenue that comes with that. After that's LEDCA budget. This budget is usually recommended to us by the LEDCA board. And so they put their numbers in there. I couldn't tell you too much about that. Those are usually the numbers that the LEDCA board recommends us to pass over the budget. The next fund is the park fund. Typically, we take in about $48,000 a year in park fund donations. And this year, we put $150,000 on the pool expense due to planned engineering of the area the pool will be built on. Those are really the only things out of that fund. The next one is the grant fund. I just put zeros in there because I couldn't really tell you. I don't have any idea of what grants we could get or how they would interface with this account at this point in time. So the grant fund exists, and if we do have any grants that'll go in here, you'll be able to see them. But I don't really have any information other than that. The next one's the blight elimination fund, which is just kind of a fund that we created to where, when we sell the property, we get revenue in. We usually have to demolish the house on it, and then we try to sell it. So we just plan to take whatever money that we get from the sell of property, which kind of based on historical values and our planning, we say that'll be around $15,000. And then we kind of plan to use all that money to demolition more houses through the city, use that money to continue the program, demolish more houses, get more property, sell it, and go around and about like that. And then last, the airport fund, we've already kind of reviewed. Fund 19, and that's
In the meantime, on the airport fund, we did look back. Our budget is available on the internet. This exact airport fund was in place for the 2017, 2018 budget as well, which was adopted as well. So it's been in place like this for 2 years now.
Oh, and then I guess continuing past the airport fund, we'll kind of see our capital improvement plan, kind of things that we see in the future that we might need, say, for police, another cruiser staff, or a cruiser, another top of police department, I should say. Fire's been looking at a quaint pumper refuse, we've been looking at a new landfill office out there at the landfill, and some wind blow fences that we can set up and move where we need to move them to catch, wind blow. And maybe even a heavy equipment shelter that we can park some of our heavy equipment items from the landfill under, keep them out of the elements. Those are kind of slated the stuff that we're looking at next year. You can see this year we put on our WatchGuard cameras that we put in the budget, and our closing fence around the old landfill. EMS has been looking at a new Tahoe, getting a new Tahoe for EMS. So we kind of slated that for next year on the next page. We've talked about like a shop overhang or some such to keep our trash trucks under when they're not in use. And we kind of looked at that for next year. You'll see the pickups we put in this year, and then we've also talked about like a new motor tractor, maybe a new dump truck for the public works, and maybe a new mosquito sprayer for vector control. And then down in the water wastewater, we put our meter replacement program in there, where it was 70,000, but now it's been ranked up to 176,000 a year. And then some stuff that they look out. And it also goes out for the next 4 years for other things that we see coming down the pipe. And then we have our kind of our salary sheet and our step and grade and our debt service.
On page 136,
Yes, sir.
down here at the bottom under officers, you have a couple of people that look like they're going down in pay, is that correct?
Yeah, the way that our step and grade works is if you have a veteran officer and he makes his way up the step and grade program and he's getting paid,
Replace them.
when you replace them, they start all the way back over. So there is some opportunity there where if a veteran goes off and a new guy comes on, the salary does go down. So I try to estimate those as close as I can to
I
reality.
saw those were the only two that really went down, so.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how it plays into it.
Any questions on anything, or comments, or areas y'all want to look at?
I remember from last year, dispatch, was there not some interest in increasing dispatch salaries?
Yes, sir, very much so.
I mean, we didn't get any packet information about any capital outlay or anything in our packet, so I have no idea what was out there.
Yes, sir, I requested an hour, $1 an hour increase for dispatch. It was submitted.
So right now, they make $12.50 an hour, and you're wanting $13.50 an hour?
Yes, sir.
Still having a problem with retention?
Yes, sir. I could very well be easily losing a very experienced dispatcher at the level end again, because they fire at our people. We train them at our expense, and we lose them.
We just lost one last month.
We lost one to the city of Lubbock, and we lost one to Levelland again. So we spend the time and the effort to train these folks, get them certified, get them licensed to do what they do, and then they go somewhere else.
How much do we spend on getting them licensed and certified?
Right off answer, I'd have to check to give you an honest answer. I don't know.
Yeah, because we've had that trouble, and I think we corrected it. I might be wrong with CDL drivers. You know, we pay for them to get their CDL, and then they just take off on us. And I had asked management to look into, you gotta be here a certain time to utilize that CDL. If you leave before that time is up, you're gonna get, your last paycheck is gonna get garnished.
Yes.
So we can, and I think that's maybe something we need to look at our dispatchers.
The dispatcher that could possibly be losing has got anywhere from 6 to 7 years of experience, so she's been licensed for quite some time.
So where's she at in step and grade?
She's right now at 1301.
What's the average salary, say like with Levelland, other places?
Levelland is willing to pay their people $18 an hour after they're certified. See, they don't have to pay for certification fees and all that because we're doing it for them.
What's part of the
And
training?
guys, it not only affects the PD, it affects EMS, it affects fire, and after 5 o'clock, they're also switchboard operators. I'd like to see them honestly up to $14 an hour, I'll be honest with you, because that would put them right there with what the county makes, pretty close.
In this county having the same problem? Do you know? Of
It's
those?
pretty solid at the county. They have a good department over there.
I know they had to get rid of one for a disciplinary issue, but as far as keeping them there regarding pay, I don't think that's an issue.
One of the issues with training is, how long does it take for them to train?
It depends on the person. It could be anywhere from 3 to 4 months.
Okay, so during that time, you actually have to double up because they're having to be with somebody working.
Yes,
So
sir.
that causes that really causes problems when you have to train over and over and over again. You get overtime pay and everything else associated with it. So we're actually spending more just to get these people trained than we would if we paid them outright and got them.
Yes, sir. The thing about it is, when we lost Sophia to Lubbock, we had to double up. We had to have a trainer, we had to have a trainee. It takes longer, in my opinion, to train a dispatcher than it does a police officer. And I'll tell you why. It's because a police officer already goes through academy like SPAG or South Plains, sometimes at their own expense. They come out, they're already licensed, they're ready to go. Then all you're talking about is getting them geographically oriented to where they can respond to calls on their own. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the officer and the level of experience.
But, I mean, and I don't know what's going on with Lebanon, but Lebanon that took at least 4, correct?
Yes, sir.
How big is the dispatch department for?
Well, they also, from what I understand, they also handle county calls too. So I'm really not sure. I know they have 4 consoles.
How many we have here? I mean, how many you have on staff right now, Chief? I mean,
Dispatchers?
Yes, sir.
5. We have one fill-in that works also in records, Sue Scott, and Val Coronado, who is the supervisor, she can fill in also. My deal is, I just don't want to be in a continual state of training, especially for somebody else that's getting all the benefit of what we're doing for that individual. I don't think, if you'll pardon the expression, I don't think Littlefield should be the minor leagues for Levelland or Lubbock or anybody else.
Well, it seems to me that if somebody has that training already, they're not going to come to Littlefield for that job.
Well, we had
very
we had a woman from Lubbock most interested in coming to Lubbock until she found out the rate of pay. She was basically getting paid twice as much in the city of Lubbock, and she was worth every penny of it. She was an outstanding dispatcher and supervisor, but there's no way you're going to be paying somebody $25.75 an hour in Littlefield.
You know, and that is a special department. I remember last year we were talking about the pay being to the point, a level of somebody, a parks department supervisor and stuff. I mean, that department really should not be even compared to any other department in the city because of the emergency situation that's associated with it. I know it's hard sometimes saying, well, this department, they sit on their butt all day long on the phone or on a microphone, and they get paid, more than somebody who's out working out there. I don't think you can really do that because there's so much more stress on that. And that's one thing we talked about that last year, and it was a point of contention. I believe it's important to pay those people real well because they have people's lives on the line.
You don't realize how valuable it is until you need it, to be honest with you.
It's like flying an airplane, hours and hours of boredom and moments of sheer terror. I wish I could play the tape for you of the situation that happened at our place. We had officers in an active foot pursuit of a subject that we had actually thought had murdered somebody. We have EMS arriving, not just Littlefield, but Amherst and I think Olton, is that correct? Sudan. And they're trying to figure out where they need to be, and fire and all that. And guess what? We only had one dispatcher. That's called stress, folks. It took them 3 days to get all of the radio traffic squared away and transcribed to where it could be written down and used. And also was working off one frequency.
Y'all wanna raise the step and grade, how much are y'all looking, wanting to consider?
Well, you're asking for $1 more? Chief?
Right now, I don't want to be hoggish or piggish or anything like that. I'm asking for $1 an hour raise.
So this would be coming out of your budget, is that correct?
It'll be coming out of the dispatch budget.
Okay.
I just get to draw the black bean and talk up.
Is everybody in favor of raising the step and grade $1?
I wouldn't be opposed to raising it at $2 if it would work. I don't know if we need to look at the numbers or something, but definitely $1, if not more.
I say, let's do $1 and let's see if we can go $2.
Let's look at our numbers and see what happens in the budget on those numbers.
I don't want to throw the budget out of whack or anything like that. That's not my point. Just
$1.
something that works for everybody.
$1 is $10,800 a year that'll come off the bottom line.
It'd be more like 15,000 after you factor in.
Yeah, you think you factor in that.
How much, Ed?
About $15,000 a dollar.
So what do you think we would save versus keep training 2 to 3 dispatchers a year?
Well, and I mean, you would spend more money giving them a raise, but I think the point of it is you don't really want you want some veteran staff in the dispatch, and stuff like that. So there's some more factors to
Obviously,
consider
overtime.
other than just the training cost.
Well, our overtime budget in dispatch is not high right now, it's only $7,500. Of course,
Chief, the dispatchers were losing Levelland. Are they driving back and forth? Or do they live?
To my knowledge, they're not.
They're moving to Levelland
Yeah,
also?
they're moving to Levelland, as far as I know. Asia Martinez, she lives in Levelland now. She left last year. Sophia Cantu, she left, she lives in Lubbock now. I don't remember the lady's name that left before Asia, but she's living in Levelland. I mean,
I was just curious if
Yeah.
they're commuting. I think $1 is good, but if we can squeeze $2, let's do that.
Okay.
And, I mean, we'll look at it, and if we're losing them, and we're still gonna lose them,
County's paying 18, correct?
Sir?
The county's paying 18.
no, sir, they're paying somewhere a little bit above 14. I would like to at least get parity with them if possible. But I'll settle for $1 if I have to, but I'd like to achieve parity with them.
Can we look at $1 and see how that affects our budget? Which would be adding another base, then it's gonna be $13.50, and then you'll have flexibility within that step and grade for years of experience.
At least they might get to eat meat every now and
You need to hire a vegetarian.
I'm just-
then. I think I better not.
Other questions or comments about the budget?
could I get a report of the bonds that are outstanding, the debt service on it?
It should be in the back of the budget.
Is that current though? Because we got one from April the 25th of 2019. And then there's something that printed out here from, I don't know where.
Well, those are just the amortization schedules that we have. So we should be kind of on track with them, but.
There's only 2 bonds currently.
We got it, we can get it from George J. Bond.
Can we get a balance and all that stuff, make sure that it's current, kind of what we have left remaining on those bonds, please? Just to me out, because we have totals of payments, so if we're actually on track, so 2020, So we add up the fiscal total, and that's how much is remaining on that bond, right?
The principal balance.
The P&I.
Well, the P&I are the amount of
That was
payments that
the
we
amount of
have,
payments we
but
have.
just the principal would be our balance on it.
Okay. And those are correct? Yes? Because I know we paid a little more this year, I mean, a lot more on bonds than we did.
Yeah, that new,
This new schedule is correct?
the one on page 140, that's the one that we paid extra money on. So that's where we kind of see the,
So after the payment was made, this is the current amortization, there's whatever on that bond left. So we have till 2024, it's paid off, and it's showing it, principal of 3.475, and that's correct? That is correct? I thought it was like 2.95.
well, the very top one, that 530 principal should be probably stricken out.
Oh, okay.
So it is, you're right, it is 2.9.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
That's all in the audit too, from last year's audit, and then this year's audit that will be coming out after the end of the fiscal year on September 30th will also reflect those new balances, but you want to refer to your audit to see what amounts of bonds were outstanding. Past year's bonds as well.
I did have some, as you were going through there, I was looking at, on, like, say, refuse, 108, we have machines and equipment, capital outlay. Let's see, so, that's 609. I'm trying to look at these and make sure they're flowing here. 609, it's showing for fiscal year 2019, no capital improvements on anything. So we have 117,941 on machines and equipment for capital outlay.
Payment.
That's a payment? Is it? Okay. That's what I was, and so all those that would have that don't have physical purchases are a payment of some sort of previous equipment.
That particular one would be the track load.
Because there was something, there was another one on a couple more, and I didn't ask it, I was gonna look at
Yeah,
it
that's
before, and it
generally-
wasn't there. And I'm like, oh, this is-
Generally what you're talking about.
Andrew, off the top, what is the debt we have remaining? We have the sewer trailer and the trash and the landfill stuff, and then the residential collection.
The residential collection dumpsters, the sewer jetter, the track loader, and the compactor that are in that 609.
Mhm.
And
I think that may have been another one. I thought that may have been.
that's all I got on the top of my head.
I think that was the one I had in mind.
Got containers, compactors,
Yeah.
sewer jet, check over.
Okay, so that's really the only thing, we had the meters, and how long until the meters are paid off?
The meters are paid off this year. September will be the last payment.
So we're doing a replacement every year with that amount, 100 and, how much was it?
176 a year, and now, it was 70,000, but this year starts now.
And every year we're gonna replace, how many per year on that?
They had it on a 7-year, I think, was the schedule, and then so they've got $176,000 in this next year's budget and $176,000 in the next year's budget. What they'll do is they'll package this next fiscal year and the fiscal year after that, and they'll do the meter replacement around September or October, where they can pay for one big project, which is $356,000, whatever it is, $360,000 worth, where they can bid out a bigger job. So they'll combine basically 2 fiscal years, prepay on part of it and pay regular on part to be able to have a bigger project to bid out, is what they've done. But the whole replacement goes every 7 years.
That's almost half of the whole project,
Well, I think we got two, we do 2 of those big projects going forward from
Mhm.
this point. So we'll do this one at the end of 2020, in kind of the September 2020, and then we'll wait 21, 22, 23, so it'll be like October 2023 when we do our last finish up at in a perfect condition, it may stretch out through the 2023 year, maybe even early into the 2024 year, depending on kind of the water meter guys. But it probably, that'd be the last project, and that should complete the project at that time.
Then we start all over again. Pretty close.
Now, it's a little
I
bit
don't-
better than dragging the paint on for 15 years like they did the last time.
Yeah.
Was I on council when I voted for that? I don't remember. I voted on it before, but I don't remember I was on it. Was it last year or the year before?
I think it was,
This past year.
Yeah, it was-
It was before it got on, maybe?
No, you were on.
you were on.
You were on.
Which one are we talking about now? Is it the ones that you drive by?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same system we have, just,
Yeah, upgraded.
new, they're new because they're wore out and the batteries are going out. So we didn't change the system up because there is a base tower system with, you know, that they'll send it all to a base tower, radio tower, and download it into the laptop. But what they, I mean, when this discussion was going on, they felt that the drive-by system was still the best. So, and the tower system's quite a bit more expensive. But I think this year's budget that we're currently in was the first year that we started putting on those two.
I think last year we had it budgeted, and this year we had it budgeted, so at the end of last year, and at the beginning of this year is when we did our first combo project.
Questions or concerns? So out of this meeting, I guess we're checking on the airport stuff, and we're looking at $1 on the dispatch. Thanks to the consensus. Nothing else on the budget before we move on? Next, we will set a public hearing for the fiscal year 2019-2020 for budget and tax rate. Janine,
Be at the next council meeting.
for the tax rate.
The 27th of August,
So what is that date?
the 27th of August.
We'll get a motion to set those hearings for August 27th.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny, that we set the public hearing for the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget and tax rate at the August 27th meeting. So we'll have a finalized budget. Is that what you're saying, finalized, or just the tax rate hearing?
We could adopt it in September.
But you don't have to, but you gotta have a public hearing on it.
You just got to adopt, as long as you adopt your, budget before your tax rate.
Is there a possibility we have another budget work session, just go over these numbers we talked about tonight and all that other stuff? Is that necessary? And we usually have 2 or 3 meetings before we actually do anything to adopt the budget.
That's what I'm asking so to do. We'll have the tax rate hearing and set the tax rate next meeting. We'll have a budget hearing, but we'll also be able to discuss the budget.
Yeah, you can discuss the budget at that time.
We won't have to adopt it next meeting.
You don't have to.
I mean, we can do it next meeting.
Last year we adopted it in September, but.
We can have a special meeting,
If
whatever.
it's
you
ready,
want to do. There's not a whole lot of changes if y'all want to look at it again. At a special meeting, we can sure call that, so just let us know what y'all want to do.
I don't believe it would hurt to have a special meeting in case something came up that we're unaware of right now, because this is, the first time we've looked at it since this year. We just have other additions and changes.
Yeah, we can look at it with the changes in August, and then if we need a special meeting 1st of September,
Can we? Okay.
we can do that, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Well, the public hearing's about the set, isn't it the public hearing about the budget that we have, working budget that we have to go into?
The public hearing is a chance for the public to
For
comment.
your tax rate.
The budget.
On the tax rate.
That's followed.
And the tax rate. So I mean, if they interjected, you don't necessarily want to adopt it, you could adopt it next meeting, but it also gives the public a chance to have a public hearing, to be able to interject about the budget.
Well, then let's just do that.
Still raise taxes and all that.
Next month's fine,
Yeah, I mean, we can look at it with the changes that we requested.
Okay.
And then if we need to have a special meeting, we can do it first of September.
Well, you can adopt it on the September city council meeting on the 24th.
And we can have a special meeting before that if we need to talk about the budget.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, we can.
Is that correct or not? Janine's not?
I'm just gonna be out of town for a little while during
Oh.
September, from the 8th through the 11th, so you can have whatever meeting you want. I guess.
In other words, we can do whatever we want, she's gonna be gone.
Okay,
But
so-
you got two more meetings, I mean, you got the 25th of August and then the 24th of September. That's, you can finalize it,
Okay, and it's August 27th, correct, is the Tuesday?
whatever that Tuesday is.
So the motion before us is to have set the public hearings on the budget and tax rate for August 27th. There has been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next, we will execute an interlocal agreement with South Plains Association of Governments to provide administrative services for the Department of Agriculture, CDBG, ERP. Mitch.
This is similar to the downtown renovation grant that the city received back before I came here. And we administered it. And the only difference is instead of 200,000, this is like 350,000, I believe, is the number on it. And there's still a lot of things that could be done with some grant money downtown for hardscape, you know, like solar lighting and bump outs and some things along that line. So I don't know what our chances are of getting this. It's usually really slim. But if it's your desire, we'll make the application for it.
Well, it never hurts to try. We'll never know if we don't try. So I'll make a motion, we have a interlocal agreement with South Plains Associations of Governments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve an agreement between the City of Louisville EMS and the City of Athens. Monica, been any changes from past years?
Mayor, the only change this year as opposed to some previous years is we've asked for 2.5% increase in our subsidies.
Only change this year is a 2.5% increase in the subsidies from them, from the City of Athens.
And that's reflected in the contract?
It's in the price of the contract.
Yes, sir, it
It is.
is reflected in the price of the contract.
Okay.
We correspond previous to the actual budget workshop, so they can prepare as can we, and all of that's included in the correspondence.
I guess the question is, they're okay with that amount, right?
I haven't heard the contrary, and I always ask if they have questions or concerns to contact me before budget work session starts so that we can prepare. And I have not heard from either entity.
Since this is starting in January, do we have to approve this right now?
We generally bring it to you guys to look at in August, September. And it causes us some issues with the state because we're contracting with a entity outside our county. We are eligible for trauma funds from their county. And if we wait until we generally do, then we end up having to get an extension from the state because of the time frames that they have. We've done that every year. It really causes a lot of extra work on my part, and I'm getting to the point that I don't like that. So I brought it to you like a month or maybe two early this year. Just hoping to go ahead and get this done so that we can make the one application to the state, not have to make the application and then ask for the extension.
guess since we're the ones receiving the money, it's better to have a signed contract on the other end rather than us, if something didn't go right on their side, have us having to do it twice.
Yes.
I don't know, it's okay for us to sign it now, but we may have to come back later if they decide to change something.
I don't, this has been a normal process. We bring it to you guys for your approval, and then we send it to them. They know by letter what it's gonna be.
Okay.
So I'm not really expecting them to do anything but sign it.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
We have a motion to approve this agreement with City of Amherst.
I'll make that motion with the agreement.
I'll second that.
Motion been made by Ben, seconded by Buddy, that we approve the agreement with the City of Canton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve an agreement between the City of Littlefield EMS and Hockley County. Same thing, Monica, same contract, 2.5% increase.
Yes, sir.
The motion,
I'll make the motion.
there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Ben, seconded by Buddy, that we approve this agreement with Hockley County. Is there any further discussion? None, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We're out of agenda items, we are adjourned.
What was the percentage increase? 2.5%.
See you.